Our next delegate is Maria Sardelis. Hello, Maria. I see your name, Maria. So I think you're now unmuted.
Okay, thank you. I'm not very savvy with this stuff. And I guess my facial thing doesn't show up, right? It's not supposed to?
Your camera's not on.
Okay, so, and it's not supposed to be, is that correct?
It can be on if you want it to be on.
Oh, I just don't know this stuff. I hate this stuff. Oh my
there
gosh.
You are. There. Welcome to our meeting, Maria. I understand this is your first time, so we're very happy to have you on board. And
I'm going to do my best, because that 5-minute constraint thing was like, oh boy. Okay,
yes.
okay. So
all right.
I'm
so
going to do my best.
The floor is yours.
Okay. The Trespass to Property Act is well written and well adjudicated. It requires no amendment or special interpretation. However, police enforcement is not in alignment with the Act or our court's rulings on the Act. The provision of police services and the safety and security of citizens is threatened when good laws are badly enforced and result in detrimental consequences to the public. Community interests are not served by police issuing trespass at the request of a person lacking the authority to do so. Pursuant to the Act and our court's rulings, a person cannot be trespassed if they are the invited guest of the occupier, or if the person has legally conferred authority such as the power of attorney or legal guardianship. The Trespass to Property Act and Ontario courts do not enumerate disruptive behavior as grounds for trespass. There are 2 types of property ownership: deed ownership and physical possessor. Multi-occupancy facilities like apartment buildings, long-term care, retirement homes, and group homes have multiple physical possession occupiers. Landlord-Tenant Board and Ontario Court of Appeal have ruled the physical occupier, not the owner or agent of the owner, can issue a trespass. Similar to Ontario Court of Appeal in the Weber's case, the Ontario Provincial Offences Court in 2019 confirmed a person with legally conferred authority cannot be trespassed. Trespass charges were withdrawn upon presentation of power of attorney documentation for a person trespassed for life from their 96-year-old mother living in a retirement home. Community interests are not served when citizens have to pay thousands of dollars to a lawyer to go before a court and beg for the court to enforce the Trespass Act as it is written. Police mistakenly take direction to trespass from the deed possessor and not the physical possessor as described in the Trespass to Property Act, who pays to occupy their lawful permanent residence. Rogue definitions of occupier by our police officers erodes public confidence. Misuse of the Trespass to Property Act brings law enforcement into disrepute. There's consequences. Compelling arguments for human rights code violations and charter rights breaches and numerous other legislation violations arise when an individual without the authority of law is forbidden from engaging in their normal freedoms to come and go and make personal choices like others in society. We have charter breaches. The Trespass to Property Act misuse results in police being complicit with charter breaches and with the obstruction of the legal authority of a power of attorney or legal guardian to care for their mentally or physically impaired grantor. Police services should not result in the safety and security of citizens being threatened with unlawful trespass for fulfilling their legal obligation to report seniors and disabled persons' abuse. Individuals raising concerns about poor care of their loved ones, similar to what our military reported during the pandemic, are being unlawfully trespassed by police, taking direction from the deed possessor. Individuals are trespassed for life, in many cases, from their family and their disabled children without due process. Care facility operators wanting to silence advocates allege the person is engaging in dangerous behavior. which, if true, is a criminal code misconduct and should be charged accordingly. And there's options. Options are disturbance of the peace, mischief, or entering a peace bond. Thankfully, unlike with misuse of the Trespass to Property Act, proof of the alleged threatening behavior must be provided in order for the charges to be applied. Due process. Facility operators with police compliance have also cited occupational health and safety as a grounds for trespass. Our courts have ruled otherwise. Occupational health and safety governs employee-employer workplace relationships, not the general public or visitors in the facility. Additional police training regarding the definition of physical occupier is imperative. Police called to trespass an individual in multi-occupancy residential facilities need to take direction from the physical occupier. Police enforcement should not be in opposition to judicial rulings on the well-written TPA. It does not serve the public interest to know and fear that the TPA is being weaponized and unlawfully administered by police. Police themselves would benefit from additional training in their day-to-day activity. Courts have deemed police are trespassers when the occupier, not the owner, has not invited them on their premises. Courts have ruled police are not in execution of their duties when they are trespassers, and therefore evidence collected is inadmissible, arrests are nullified, and in the event that police officers are assaulted, charges are dropped. I probably came up to my 5 minutes, right? I am not wanting to slam police, but what really bugs me is that when we have police officers assaulted and they're trespassers, so the charges are dropped, and I have cases, court law cases, where they have had physical injury, permanent, discs removed out of their backs, attempted murder, and the charges are dropped because they were considered trespassers. I have an issue with that. I don't like that the judge decided that way. I wouldn't have. But this is where our officers need the help as well, besides our people living in retirement homes and long-term care homes. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. You bring up some excellent information to this board. I certainly appreciate it. And I already see that there are members of the board that have their hand up because they'd like to ask you some questions or have comments. So I will go to Member Curry, please.
Maria, thank you very much for that. I read all of your material ahead of time. It was super helpful because there was a lot to digest there, and it was very helpful to me. I do want to ask you sort of, I really appreciate you had to have had some experience with this to have taken, this on and want to come and speak to us about it. So, I mean, what I read when I went through it, I thought really your end goal is that you want police to be better trained to understand all that you have said because of the inaccuracies, like the wrongly wrong charges or whatever, however you would phrase it. Is that your main goal, that you want them to be better trained and understand it, or what other goals do you have?
Yeah, I want them to be better trained on understanding who the physical occupier is pursuant to the Trespass Act. And the courts have ruled it's the person in physical possession. Yeah. And if they could arrive to facilities like care homes who are, trying to throw us out just for advocating and say, property owner or operator, can I speak to the physical occupier, and I'll speak to them about whether they want to trespass this person, or does the person they want to trespass have legally conferred authority, just to enforce the Trespass Act as it's written and not banish people for life. The amount of people I have heard who didn't get to see their resident until after they had died, pre-pandemic, it's not acceptable. It's just not, and it's a good law. There's nothing wrong with it. And when we have criminal code misconduct options, it's great. Let's charge accordingly. And the one thing that's so good about criminal code misconduct charges, they have to provide proof. Do you know how many people would say, oh my God, we would get proof? They would have to prove it. There's advocates that would drop to their knees in joy when they would hear that the facility had to provide proof.
Thank you very much for that. It's very helpful too that your presentation showed the other option. You're not just, criticizing and Jenny, you're saying, instead of this, do this. Very helpful to us. Thank you very much for providing all that information certainly to me, who didn't understand any of that until I read your delegation.
And I'm available anytime to discuss more, because trust me, I have done research on this like you would not believe. And actually there's Yeah, there's a document right now, a full document that has been reviewed by the Department of Justice regarding charter breaches and police officers. I'm not going public with this stuff because, again, I've got a very soft spot for police officers. But if it ever catches on, there are huge charter violations, and right now there could be a class action. I want to avoid all of that if we can. It's just a simple little bit of training, and I swear I could do it just in 15, 20 minutes if I had to protect our guys. And our guys, I mean, male and female. Oh God, can you tell I'm nervous?
Thank you very much. Very, very much appreciated.
I can see that the chief has his hand up, but just before I go to the chief, Maria, can you tell us a little bit more about the organization that you represent?
Yes, Advocacy, Access to Seniors and Disabled. When I was number 3 of 4 people trespassed within an 8-day period from one City View retirement home. And I actually didn't complain about my mom's care. She was fine. We had private care for her. I complained about watching a young employee, physical workplace violence. And the next day I was trespassed for life from my mother. And that's when I found out that this even happens. And then I found out it's right across Ontario, right across Canada. And I remember, trying to correspond with the owner and saying, I don't understand, I just stood up for an employee. Workplace violence, is not acceptable. She was just a young little thing. First job ever. And again, I've got a bleeding heart. And so I stood up for her, and I never got a response. And Christmas was coming, wasn't allowed to see my mother. I hired a lawyer. The lawyer tried getting what was the grounds for my trespass. Nothing. And then I went to 2 justices, by the way, at the courthouse. I said, how do I fix this? I want to see my mother. She's just been diagnosed with dementia. Her clock is ticking. Her biological clock, but the one in her head's ticking even faster. And the 2 justices literally said, you're going to have to breach the verbal trespass, get arrested, and go before a judge. And I said, you're kidding me. And so I thought, okay, if that's what I have to do, then let's set it. Let's set the precedents. Let's do it and see what happens. Of course, I have POA, like a lot of other people who are part of that group that has come together. And sure enough, I presented my POA. My lawyer did, obviously. And what I realized is, that was $15,000 to say, please, sir, enforce the Trespass Act as it is written. Here's my POA. And that was it. Charges withdrawn. So I sent out a call to see how many others were suffering like this, and found out it was quite wide. And now we've got 82 members on the board, sorry, you guys are the board, in the advocacy group. And that's what we're standing up for, and that we cannot be denied access. And if we are truly misbehaving, and I've seen people that, yes, I would like them kicked out too. Don't get me wrong. Nobody's an angel all the time. But when people have emotional outbursts because they went into the dining room and saw their mother eating mashed potatoes off the floor, because once again, there was no one supervising the dining room, or when a woman goes in to see her mother unexpectedly at the end of a day and says, oh, I'll just grab a quick hug and kiss, and they can't find her throughout the whole building. The woman's paralyzed in a wheelchair. They're looking outside of the building. Right. And someone goes into a storage closet and finds her mother in a tilt-up position, and she was obviously, so you have an emotional outburst. Yeah. And that's the behavior they use to say that you were, Right. And so that was far and wide. Okay. That was far and wide. And so I had to do something about it.
Yes, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm going to pass it over to the chief because he still has his hand up. Chef?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Maria, thank you for the information. Very articulate. Obviously, you have some issues with what we've done or haven't done, and you explained it very respectfully, and I appreciate that. Obviously, we have so many, federal and provincial and municipal laws that we follow. Training is something that we have to embark on all the time to either teach ourselves and or relearn as the brain gets too heavy, and make sure that we get things right. So, that training in this particular area is one. I've dealt with it in my career, and every situation is a little bit differently, and how you apply those different those options, those legislative options that we have And then as we focus on the trespass, it is very technical. So I think it certainly is. And my team and I did have a bit of a discussion on this, knowing that you were coming, and my wondering how we apply that regulation here in Ottawa. So I think training is necessary and is needed, and it's something that we can embark on. And we will, if you're willing, use your research and some of your perspectives, and we can line that up with, just with our legal too. And I'm not saying you're wrong or that what you're presenting isn't accurate, but just make sure that we're comfortable with what we have. And some of the key issues we bring up in terms of, the person that pays, not the, what you said, that we address some of that as well too, and look into that. So thank you.
And if it helps, the research I did actually went to the Ontario Legislative Research Library, and the province of Ontario researchers researched it all and said, yes, this is going on. And hence that was why motion 129 was passed on March 4th, 2021, which asked and the legislature unanimously supported police apply the Trespass Act in accordance with our judicial rulings. So I mean, I'm happy to have the research reviewed again. I have no issue with that, of course. But believe it or not, it's been already approved, and Department of Justice lawyers also reviewed it. But I would be so happy to review it with your people and go over it. And it's a pretty simple act. It's only about property, who comes, who goes. And historically, I did a huge research on historically how it evolved, and it's never changed from the day it was way back in the medieval days. It's about who comes and goes, period. Full stop. And then everything else is covered by other legislation.
That's
thank you.
This is a perfect example of working with a member of our community, and we thank you very much, Maria, for coming forward today. So glad that you did that. And please, we'll, as the chief says, we'll be in touch with you, and we hope to see you here again.
Well, I won't see you again, but from the sounds of it, they're losing someone incredibly special. I'd like to put a motion to the board that they extend your stay for another 12 months and they double your wage, and that'll keep you there. Right?
Thank you so much, Maria.
All right. Thank you so much, truly.
I'm never very far. I'll tell you that. I won't be very far, but thank you very much. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.